Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to give it a little bit of an update. I don't have any slides, so you can either thank me or scourge me, whichever way you prefer. So many of you have heard, and we've talked about it before, but we do have a program going on in Kansas that is a pilot program at this point in time. We have officially named it Cattle Trace, so if you hear the verbiage out there, that's what it's referring to. But I did want to go over just a little bit in case some of you haven't heard what we basically have 3 objectives that we wanted to deal with in this project. And primary one of them and the first one was to develop a purpose-built infrastructure for an animal disease traceability system. So that was our goal. We elected from the very beginning that we weren't going to compare technologies. We weren't going to compare, different items or different products out there. So we actually looked at what was available. We did a lot of research, a lot of studying, and came to the conclusion that we wanted to look at the UHF technology and see if there was an opportunity to prove that it had the ability to do traceability for our basically our feeder cattle population that we have out there. Secondly, we want to evaluate the efficiency and capabilities of the system and the infrastructure. So that's something that we will continue to do. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. And then we want to determine the value of that disease traceability system throughout the supply chain. So there again, our goal was to make sure that this system, if it can work and as it works, that it's able to accommodate every portion of our supply chain throughout the beef production system. So from that, one of our goals and our guiding principles is that we felt like it needed to be a hands-free system. We didn't want to put any imposition or anything of that sort on the industry. So our whole goal was to make it a hands-free. We wanted them to operate, and we've actually got a drinking game going on in our state. So whenever we say speed of commerce, we all get to take a drink. And so, but at this time, we want to make sure that it can operate at what we call speed of commerce in the way that our Kansas producers are the way we have to do business in the state of Kansas. So from that, and as well as we really evaluated what do we truly need to know. What do we need to know in the case of doing a traceability project or doing a trace out? And so we looked at minimal data points. And so from this is we're actually collecting just 4 points at any one time of these when we do these collections. And that's the animal ID number that animal has in it, the GPS coordinates of where that animal was read, or what we call sightings, where that animal was actually sighted, and the date and time stamp that it happened. We feel like that by doing that, we can leverage much like we did this morning, we leverage the data, we leverage the information, we leverage the records that those individual facilities already have in place, and that we can do traceability from them records. There's no need at this point in time to have that in my office, I don't think, and so that's one of the things we wanted to test. And then lastly, we felt like data privacy, and we hear time and time again about data privacy, and so we wanted to really work and concentrate on data privacy and how do we maintain that in a level but still be able to be functional in a disease traceability. So one of the things that we looked at really closely from the very first, and we've actually put on some pretty tight blinders on ourselves in the fact that we're only looking at animal disease traceability. And so we want the infrastructure there for other purposes. If individuals or entities want to take advantage of it, we encourage that. But we're only looking at traceability and disease traceability. And so from that, we decided that data privacy, that this data would go into a third-party database. And so we've actually set up a 503 limited liability corporation that has actually got a board of directors of producers across the state, and this data goes into that database, and that's all it goes into. I mean, that's the only place that it goes at this point in time. We're working out the metrics of how that data can be accessed and who can access that data, as well as we're also working out on the algorithms for how those queries work and when they encompass animals that have crossed state lines and how that's all going to occur. So we're working through that process right now. So like I said, we did appoint a board of directors. It's made up of actually we have 5 members on our board of directors now. We did it with, we've got 2 cow-calf producers, 2 feedlot operators, and a livestock market operator that's on that board of directors. And we did that for 2 reasons. And I failed to say from the very beginning is that this project is really, I'm here representing it, but it's actually a consortium of our industry. It's our industry that came to us and said, let's talk about this, let's do something. And so on our advisory board of the group that started this, we've got the Kansas Department of Ag, but we've also got our university, Kansas State University representation. We've got USDA representation, and we've also got private industry as well on that, whether it be from our producer groups, but we've also got individual producers that are on this advisory board. So it really has been an industry-driven initiative, and it's been in something. So we wanted it to be, we wanted it to be their project. But also it does 2 things for us, is it provides, honestly, protection from Freedom of Information Act. And so by being a private entity, that data is not accessible to the public. And so based through the process of our board of directors, that's how we're going to get access to that data. So we're in the process. We've been going since about April. Just to give you a little bit of background on where we're at right now, we have partners-wise, we've got 9 livestock markets that actually we have installed readers in. And there again, I've failed to mention that we've asked everybody to put a little bit of the skin in the game. And so every one of these partners have actually contributed either time, money, or facilities into this process. And so we have livestock markets. We have 9 of them. We have 2 backgrounders that are involved in our state that we've actually installed readers in at this time. We've got 13 feed yards, and we're in the process. We got 1 of them completed, and they're completing the other 2. We got our 3 major packers that have presence in the Kansas, so we're actually putting readers in there to be able to retire these tags. We felt like that was vital, that we had the ability to prove that we could retire tags in these cases. Our whole goal is we wanted to target out 55,000 tags from the beginning. We've distributed about 37,500 of those tags at this date. And so that sounds like a lot of tags, but really it's a drop in the bucket. And that's probably been one of our biggest hurdles, is we really wanted to show a proof of concept of how we could do traceability through the different phases of production. But we only got 55,000 tags and don't have a captive supply of cattle. It's really been, we've had to be very strategic about how we put those cattle in, there's tags in cattle and who wants to enroll and that type of thing, so that we could try to get cattle that was going to go into our member livestock markets and go into the member or the participating feed yards and down the road, so that we could get those multiple reads on that. So that's probably been one of the biggest challenges out there. We know there's a certain number of cattle that we're never going to see again once we put those tags in, because they're just not involved in the system. We have probably the thing that I think is probably more exciting than anything is the tremendous interest that we've had from other states to be involved. And so we actually right now we have 3 other states that are actively participating or getting ramped up to participate, and that's Kentucky, Missouri, and Nebraska. So they've, in different phases, they've actually installed readers in that. We're working with their facilities to know that those cattle have a tendency to come to Kansas, and so we're working with those. We've got about 3,000 tags out to those member states as well. They're just getting ramped up, and so it's been a huge plus. We want to see that become more of a regionality or a beef, all-encompassing beef project is what it amounts to. I got a picture here. We've actually got 12 states that have reached out to us and said, hey, we'd be interested in doing that, and they're going through their discovery process right now to determine how they want to play, if they want to play, and whatever. But they truly have interest in how they want to do that. To date, we've got about 20,000 sightings, or what we call sightings, in our database at this point in time. And what that means is that animal, that tag, went through a reader somewhere. Like I said, it's in the database. I don't have discovery of that database, but we're starting to see that. We're just now getting enough time under our belt that we're starting to see multiple reads on some of these cattle, whether they went through a livestock market, they're in a feed yard now, so we're starting to see them come out of our feed yards. Our first set of cattle should hit the packers sometime the latter part of this month that were actually tagged, and so it's getting kind of exciting as far as starting to see some multiple reads on these cattle. So this spring, we actually are starting to start doing some of the economic analysis that we have going on. We're teaming up with the Kansas State University Economic Division, and so they've got some PhD students that are really going to start looking at the different phases of the economics analysis on, one, how does it work traceability and what is the true cost of this program? But two, is there an opportunity to leverage the infrastructure for producer work or leverage it for other economic purposes? My mantra has always been it's kind of a shame to have this reader setting in this market for one purpose, and that's to put data into a database that I hope I never ever see. So I really would like to see us, if we can leverage that infrastructure for other purposes. But there again, with our blinders on, that's not us. We want it to be there available, but we want to really encourage other folks to see what they can do with it. So we always get the question, well, how good is it working? What are the read rates? And there's a little bit of a hiccup in this thing, and the fact that we talk about it being totally passive. And so when I say it's hands-free, folks, this thing is literally hands-free. These readers are sitting in these facilities. They're on 24/7. The only time they do anything is when an animal or a tag passes underneath them. So one of the issues is we never know when we should get a read. We never, theoretically, unless they call us and say, hey, there's a set of cattle I'm going to go put through there in the next 15 minutes, we never really know we should get a read until it happens. But from that, we have reached out to our partners and said, hey, let us know when things are going to happen, and let us know kind of how many head count you're going to get, and we'll compare them. So right now we have about 4,500 reads that we know that should have happened. And from that, we've got an overall read rate of about 97%, or just a touch under 97%. 98.6 is coming out of our feed yards, and we're consistently 96.4% coming out of our livestock markets. I see that as a huge win, because honestly, folks, we are not asking them to do anything different than they normally would. If they flop the gate open and them cattle run out at 110 mile an hour, we're asking those readers to read them at 110 mile an hour, and they're doing it right now. And so they're new tags. They haven't been in very long, but I personally got some high hopes for it. So what do we learn from it at this point in time? And obviously one of the big take-homes is we don't have enough infrastructure. We got to get more infrastructure out there to be able, if we're truly going to be able to do sightings and narrow that focus down to when we do a trace, we've got to get more infrastructure out there, and that includes tags, but probably more importantly, in my opinion, is readers. We got to get more readers and more facilities out there that are dealing with that. So we're struggling a little bit with the infrastructure component of it, but we knew that was going to be a key component when we started, because we only had limited ability to put them out there. The other thing that probably is come to evident is that because it's a passive system and because it's just there's nobody really monitoring it or going to be monitoring. So when we scale this thing up, and if we get to the point of scaling it up, we're going to figure out some way that somebody's truly monitoring it. And we've come to realize that there's going to have to be a fairly significant IT and service component to this, and the fact of our livestock markets, we haven't asked them. We don't expect them to service it. We don't expect them to even mess with it unless they so desire to leverage it for their own purposes. We've gotten occasions where a livestock market, all of a sudden the reeds stopped halfway through. We were tagging cattle and the reeds just stopped, and it's like, we didn't realize it was happening, that they had quit, until halfway through we realized there was nothing coming in. We go in and someone had plugged it into another plug-in that had a switch on it and didn't turn the switch on. So there's going to be things like that we're going to have to, challenges that we're going to have to overcome, and how we're going to support that infrastructure once it's out there. Probably the big thing, and a lot of conversations happened here, is we need more UHF tag options. We don't have enough tags out there. Right now we only have one USDA approved tag on the market for UHF. It's served us well, but it doesn't fit for all entities. And I'll be real frank with you, it's a big panel tag, and there's a lot of folks that don't like big panel tags on their cattle, and we've had some of those tags cut out because they don't like them once they get to the secondary owner or whatever. And so we truly need to have some more options. We've heard it and we've talked and we've had that. I just would encourage that you know, we get that ability for more tags to be approved, and so we know that that's one of our limitations at this point in time. And then likewise, and I've said it many times, we really want to try to figure out and encourage operations, encourage allying businesses or allying operations to figure out ways to leverage this infrastructure, to leverage it for their own purposes, whether it be for their feedlot management, their cow-calf management. For example, we have one feedlot operation now that's put it at their doctoring chute. So they're individually reading these UHF tags one at a time. But they did it for one reason, and that was when they load out, they have one at their loadout chute, and they can actually, and they have picked up cattle that still did not meet their residue, that they somehow missed, didn't meet their residue withdrawal or their antibiotic withdrawal, and so they're utilizing it for that purposes. And so we just need more examples of that, of how they can utilize that. And then I have to give kudos to the Cattle Traceability Working Group. The white paper that was just presented on the liability thing, is we've had a lot of questions on that and a lot of concern about that, and we've used this paper tremendously in trying to help address some of those fears and some of those concerns. And so we do thank them for doing that. But we're still growing. Like I said, one of the things that we have done through our impatience, I guess, is more than anything, is that we want to look at all phases of it, but we didn't want to put all of our tags in baby calves and wait for two and a half years to get to truer data. And so we're actually putting cattle in tags in baby calves, we're putting tags in feeders, we're putting tags at our feed yards, we're putting tags at our livestock markets. So we've apportioned out what we think is an appropriate number of tags in every one of those divisions in an effort to know that we're not going to get, you know, if we put them in at feed yards, we'll probably only get 2 reads off of them, but we know that's part of the process, and so we wanted to make sure that we could get as many reads as we could.